will be a long show, mini submissions. Yeah, Vishnu, I got you up. You're number 8, buddy. You're number 8. You can, everybody, we keep this thing on the Twitch will have it for a while, so you can watch the replay if you miss it or miss part of it. And we haven't figured out what we're gonna do with the YouTube, and it feels like too long to put it on YouTube. But we're gonna try. I'm gonna try to put in the good parts of the show onto YouTube. Okay, so now let's move on to Juan's game, and let's flip it because he was black. And here we go. All right, a6, kind of an interesting move. It's going to, let's just say, multi-purpose move. It's not nearly as bad as it looks. Some people might revolt when they see a6, but we'll see that as a variety of good points. The first is that white has to worry about the DCs and b5s of the world, and then bishop b7. And if white takes, which I believe he should, then black is going to say it might end up being useful, especially if white wants to go for a minority attack, because the pawn is already here, and we're going to put the pawn on c6 anyway. So we got like a block, a prepared block on the b5 square. So that's kind of the dark truth of this a6 move. All right, now, is white better? Yeah, he's a little bit better. And here's an interesting thing that I'm going to blow through a couple of these moves and talk about the position starting here. Very typical Carlsbad structure. We've had a lot of games like this on the show. Is there a list of which games are being looked at today? No, there's a list on my clipboard here but I basically, my process is there's a lot of games are submitted, and I'm really trying to look at all of them. There are a lot of games to look at, and so maybe there's some way that I can give the information out. But basically, I try to organize it before the show and think about it in the weeks ahead. And by the way, I want to stress, there were several games here which are actually annotated. I just felt like I wouldn't be able to do them. It's not just both time-wise and in terms of my mental ability to keep them all in my head. Okay, so let me come back to this game. I will try to come up with some way of giving a list. All right. In this game, white is now going to kind of fart around and go for the minority attack. And one of the great things that Juan writes in a future note is he says, I know you don't like the minority attack, but it's probably his best plan now that his pieces are not fighting for e4. It's hilarious that Juan knows me so well. And one of the reasons that I don't necessarily like it is I feel like it's the people who do it are playing with pawns instead of pieces, right? Because the dream of the minority attack is to do this, smack this, maybe you take here, and maybe you can say that you've got a weakness on c6, taking forever and often not paying attention to the pieces. In the meantime, black will at some point put a knight on e4, and even with reduced material, he will strive anyway to get an initiative against the white king. In a lot of ways, it's unfair that he sometimes gets initiative onto the white king because white has more pawns in front. So this was a position when I was thinking about what white should do. Let me say I believe in white's position because a6, it's nice, but if you don't do the minority attack, it's not that special. And we did get the exchange of the dark square bishops. I'm not saying white's a lot better or anything, nothing like that. But I do think white should be able to find a path to some kind of version of him being better. And I'm not at all sure of this next move, but I think that what white needs to understand in these positions is that he's got an extra central pawn, and he should be at least dreaming about using it. And the move that at least attracts my attention is knight e5, knight bd7, and f4. Now, I want to stress it's still a very complicated struggle ahead for both sides, but the idea is I want to squeeze him. I want to squeeze him a little bit, and I want to use the f-pawn in this way. This is obviously double-edged, and white's going to have to follow this up energetically if it's going to work out at all. This is usually called the Pillsbury attack. Usually, Pillsbury attack you could say is a particular variation of the Queen's Gambit decline, but in my head it's also just this idea where you're using the f4 move as in the Carlsbad structure. Let me show you something else about Frederico the F-pawn. Let's say black plays the conventional, let's say knight c3, knight f6, snip, snop, bishop g5, bishop e7. There's a couple move orders this could happen in. But this is like the beautiful Kasparov plan from back in the day, which is we're going to put the pawn on f3. And there, white, at first it feels like, oh, the idea of f3 is to push e4, and that's part of the idea. But the other main point is that by putting the knight on e2, you get to control e4 and dominate the knight on f6. And we've talked about this on the show before, but I wanted to stress it because when we talk about the dreams of Frederico in the Carlsbad in particular, it's something where Frederico needs to have his say in some way, or else I don't feel like white's going to do anything here. So what am I preaching today? When you move Frederico the F-pawn, well, there needs to be, either a sense of urgency. There has to be a sense of urgency that you are making a dynamic weakness and you want to turn it into something. If you don't turn it into something, well, then you're going to meet the fates that Marty and Nicholas's opponent did in their games. All right, let's check this out. White flutters about a little bit. Gets this very standard 94 thing. And looks fine. Even g5 is fundamentally okay, and here white goes insane, and let's have some sympathy for the guy. What are you supposed to do? I like what Juan is doing here. He's pushing on the king side, and it's both psychologically uncomfortable and positionally uncomfortable, and especially if white doesn't have a plan. So he loses his mind. And here we go. Thank you very much. And now I guess, I don't know, we're winning or something? At least it kind of sort of felt that way to me. Yeah, beautiful position. And here he makes a mistake. Juan makes a mistake. And we did a show. It wasn't really a show. It was a vote chess game that we played against some guys in England. And one of the things that Kostya remarked on is that the knight on d6 is an amazing piece in the Carlsbad structure. It's just covering, it's just hitting this. Everything's hit, and you cover your only weakness with b7. And of course, white's left with the business on e3. Much better position for black. Instead, h5 seems weird. And we get this ending. I'm not sure about king e2. Okay, here we go though. fe3, rook e3. Let's read what Juan writes. I honestly thought this was winning, but later analysis with the computer showed how wrong I was. I don't know how, you're a little bit wrong. It was not unreasonable to go for this position given where you were. The guy did play passively. In fact, let's just chastise white for a second here. King f2. In this position, white should be, I think, playing things like rook d1 and rook d3, and then, dreaming of activity himself. Okay, king e2. This is really passive, isn't it? King f6. Of course, actually, I take it back. You're right, you're right. You could play king f5 here if you analyze it out. But is it dangerous for white? Absolutely. All right. h4, b4, and I hear you with king f3 being a dead draw. And let's just say the bummer for black is that white has more tempos to burn on the queen side. So for example, in this position, yeah, he has more tempos. There's no way that we can move around enough times on the queen side for him to move off of f3. If he moves off f3, then we're going to win. I think we get a similar thing in the game. So here we go. b4, g4. And now we're doing well. We just wait, and now we've got it. We're gonna eat everything. All right, beautiful game.